They used to tell kids, don't end up like Billy the Kid. Now I see you selling t-shirts that say, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6, and I can't tell if I'm looking at a joke or my own ghost in neon, and you wear it like that's wisdom. I'm Billy the Kid, William H. Bonney if you're feeling formal. I'm famous for thinking a gun could solve my problems faster than my brain could, and I have just come back from a walk through your America. I have seen your gun stores, your school drills, your campaign ads, your Second Amendment merchandise, and your so-called patriots playing cowboy at the courthouse. I lived in a time when a hot-headed boy with a 6-shooter could ruin a day, maybe a town. You live in a world now where a hot-headed man with what you're selling can ruin a nation, and you call this safety. Now, I won't lie. When these excellent adventure fellas first dragged me into the present and opened the doors of a modern gun shop, I thought I'd died and gone to the pearly gates of bad decisions. Wall-to-wall iron, pistols in colors, rifles with more rails than a train yard, boxes of bullets stacked like sugar in a general store. Back in my day, if a man walked into town carrying one of these black rifles with 30 shots in it, somebody would have rung a bell and asked which army he belonged to. Here you call it open carry and argue over whether it matches your belt. I grew up poor, angry, and stupid. A gun to me was a shortcut to respect, to fear, to cash. A revolver was 6 chances to make the worst choice of your life. And it was work. You had to light powder, mind the weather, feel every round you loaded. When you pulled that trigger, there was no pretending it was an accident. Killing a man took a decision. More than one, usually. A bad one every step. What you've done is take that same stupidity I wore like a badge and put it on a subscription plan. Guns by mail, guns like loyalty cards, guns like t-shirts. Buy 3 and get the 4th magazine free. You put assault rifles on billboards next to burgers. You put kids in Christmas cards holding hardware I'd have saved for a real war. You made just like Billy the Kid into a personality brand, and then acted surprised when your street started to feel less like a country and more like my worst days. Let me say this straight, because I owe you that much. Steel does not make a man brave. It does not make him free. It does not make him good. It just makes whatever's inside him louder. Where I came from, there weren't many people, and there was a lot of open space. A bad temper and a gun could end one man, sometimes a few. The law was thin, the distance was thick, and every trigger pull carried consequence you could smell. You didn't measure a man by how much iron he wore. You measured him by whose mother he didn't make cry. Here, you got millions of people stacked into cities, children in classrooms, crowds in theaters, worshipers in pews, all packed close as cattle in a rail car. And you flood that world with guns that spit bullets faster than I can count. That's not frontier toughness. That's bad math. You scaled up the firepower and forgot to scale up the sense. I walked into one of your schools, not as an outlaw, as a visitor. Walls covered in posters, bright colors, little hands drawing a future. And then I saw the lines taped on the floor for active shooter drills. I listened to a teacher talk about how they practice hiding the children, not from a storm, not from a flood, but from a man with a gun. Maybe your kid does those drills. Maybe you did one last week. In my time, school was the place the pastor might tell you I was wicked. In your time, school is the place where some kid lies awake at night, wondering if tomorrow is the day someone like me walks through the door with a weapon even I would have been afraid to carry. You want to know the difference? When I rode into town, folks saw trouble and they ran. They didn't carve it into law. They didn't call it a lifestyle. They sure didn't hang a slogan over it and call it freedom. That word, freedom, I hear it a lot now. Gun freedom. Defend freedom. Stand up for freedom. Won't pretend I don't understand a man wanting to defend his home. Grew up in a world where nobody was coming if you called 911 because there was no 911 to call. But I watch your politicians sign bills that make it easier for men like I used to be to carry weapons anywhere, no questions asked, and then shrug when those same weapons show up at the school, the grocery, the church. They say, the answer to a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Let me tell you something from the inside. When the shooting starts, it's real hard to tell which is which. You've taken a tool that should be rare and grave, a last resort under law, and turned it into a costume piece for your fears. You've got men in tactical vests haunting the produce aisle. You've got campaign ads where candidates shoot at targets labeled with their enemies' names. You've got talk show cowboys joking about Second Amendment solutions like civil war is a weekend hobby. That ain't freedom. That's a slow suicide dressed up as patriotism. And here's where I have to say a hard thing, and you can hate me for it if you like. A terrified man with a gun isn't a defender. He's a risk. I know, because I was one. Every time I walked into a saloon with my hand close to my revolver, I told myself I was protecting myself. The truth was, I was scared. Scared of being disrespected. Scared of being broke. Scared of dying in a world that didn't even know my name. Fear on a hair trigger is how you get bodies on the ground. I've seen it. I've made it. Now I see that same fear pumped into your veins like whiskey, only now it's got a marketing department. Every headline says crime is out of control. Every ad shows a stranger in a hoodie at your door. Every politician tells you that if the other side wins, you'll be stripped, beaten, and left defenseless. So you clean out the store, line your closets with guns, and sit up at night watching shadows, calling it vigilance. The more scared you are, the more they sell. The more afraid you feel, the more they promise that only they and your guns can save you. Where I come from, we had a word for that. A protection racket. And then there's your politics. You have men running for the highest office in this land who cannot accept the word no from the people. They lose an election, and instead of riding off, they howl, "Stolen!" into the sky. They call on crowds. They cultivate militias. They say, "Stand back and stand by." And men with rifles on their shoulders and flags on their backs take the hint. They show up at state houses, ballot counts, governor's mansions, armed and angry, ready to send a message. Let me be real clear on this. When citizens arrive at the counting of votes with guns on display, that's not patriotism. That's a threat. I know the look in their eyes. I've seen men walk down a street with a rifle, not because they plan to pull the trigger, but because they want everyone else to know that they could. That's how gangs operate. That's how warlords operate. And when a man running for office smiles at that, defends that, or winks at that, he ain't a defender of freedom. He's building himself a gang and calling it a movement. You think that's harsh? I've seen this story before. A posse is a useful thing when you're chasing a real killer and you're bound by law. But a posse that answers only to a man's pride, that's how towns burn. Don't dress it up in camo and flags and tell me it's something new. Now I know some of you are thinking, easy for you to say, Billy. You were the outlaw. You were the criminal. If they'd had more good guys with guns back then, maybe you would have been stopped sooner. And you're right about one thing. I deserved to be stopped. I earned a bullet or a cell a dozen times over. I'm not here to wash that away. But listen close to what I'm about to tell you. The men who finally brought me down were not the ones who fired the most shots. They were the ones who had the patience to build a case, to track, to plan, to follow the law. The law is what finally beat me, not some drunk with a faster draw. You don't beat chaos by arming everybody and hoping the best ones win. You beat chaos by having rules that really do apply to everyone, and a few men and women with the guts to stick to them when it's hard. You beat chaos by treating a gun like what it is, a last resort, under law, reserved for those trained and answerable. You beat chaos by making sure the fellow who makes your laws fears the Constitution more than he loves the cheer of a gun rally. I'm not here to hand you a list of statutes. That's for your lawmakers and your people to argue through. But I can tell you what any sane country has to do if it doesn't want to turn itself into my worst memories. First, stop pretending more guns always means more safety. In my world, you could see the evidence in blood on the street. In yours, you have something better than rumor and legend. Numbers. You can count. You can see which places with which rules have more people killed and which have fewer. You can see who's doing the killing, what they're using, what rules were in place. That's not politics. That's just tallying the dead and asking why. If a man tells you he's on the side of life and freedom, but he refuses to look at the numbers because they might shame his story, he's not a leader. He's a salesman. Second, stop letting fear write your laws. Any would-be strongman can point at your neighbor and say, "He's coming for you." It's an old trick. Slaveholders used it. Rail barons used it. Now your modern authoritarians use it with a new coat of paint. The migrants are coming, the cities are coming, the government is coming, the other party is coming. There's always a monster at the door that just happens to require you to buy another gun and give another inch of your democracy to the man with the microphone. Ask yourself every time, who profits from my fear? Third, don't let men build cults with guns at the center. You want a militia? Your Constitution already wrote one. It's called All of You, under law, with uniforms that answer to the people's representatives. I've seen too many little generals in my life. Ranch bosses, railroad men, sheriffs who thought their badge was a crown. A real republic doesn't kneel to a man. It kneels to its own rules. If your notion of freedom requires unfettered armed loyalty to a single leader, that ain't a republic anymore. That's a gang writ large. Fourth, for the love of everyone you say you cherish, stop making a religion out of my mistakes. Don't pin my name to bar walls and bumper stickers and call murder a lifestyle. I was a scared, angry kid who thought a gun was a shortcut through a twisted world. I left more grief behind me than glory. To see that spirit pulled out of the grave, polished up, and marketed as real American offends even the sorry ghost of me. You want to honor the West? Then remember this. Whole towns survived not because every drunk boy had a gun, but because enough sober men and women insisted that the law meant something. I can hear some of you saying, "You're just here to take our guns." No, I'm here to hold up a mirror. Any nation that calls itself free has to answer two questions. First, who holds the power to harm? Second, who holds the power to stop it? If the answer to both questions is whoever is angriest, you don't have a country. You have a brawl with a flag on top. So here's my confession, as plain as I can put it. I was wrong about what a gun could do for a man's soul. It didn't fix my fear, it fed it. It didn't earn me respect. It bought me silence and distance. It didn't make me free. It made me dangerous, to others and to myself. You have a chance I never had. You can look at men like me as a warning, not a blueprint. If I had lived long enough to grow old in my own time, maybe I'd have come to this sooner. Maybe I'd have stood in some dusty town and told the boys at the bar to put their pistols away and learn to settle scores with words and law. I didn't get that chance. You do. So ask yourself, quietly, honestly, when nobody's watching, what's really inside you when you reach for that gun or that ballot or that man on the screen? If it's love of family, then you'll be willing to build a world where they don't need to hide under desks. If it's love of country, then you'll be willing to accept rules that make sense even when they inconvenience you. If it's fear of strangers, of change, of losing a man you've crowned in your heart, then at least have the courage to name it fear. Don't call it freedom. Don't drag the word patriot over it like a blanket. Finally, I was Billy the Kid, the outlaw you used to warn your children about. Now, I've seen the century you built, and I'm here to warn you about yourselves. If a man like me thinks you've gone too far with your guns, you've lapped crazy twice. Pull back, use your head, put your courage into law and reason, not into cosplay and threats. And if you want more dead outlaws and old ghosts telling you the truth about your time, subscribe to this most excellent adventure. I've seen where this road leads. You don't have to ride it all the way down.